Hello, friends. Today is still Friday, June 10th, 2022, and I have recorded a very long version of a video earlier. I cut it in half and decided to use the other half for the video I'm making now, and this is me simply recording an introduction to it. Uh, Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel and enjoy. The next piece of news I would like to talk about is something that I found on Twitter. It's a thread made by an account belonging to Bill Conacher. He's a Canadian man who has a family. He has a wife and a teenage daughter. They live in Mariupol. They lived in Mariupol even while the city was under siege. And once the part of the city where he lived fell under Russian control, he was able to sort of come out of his basement and tell his story. And I think if you were listening to the news over here in America, you might be surprised to hear what he has to say. Now, I heard of his story several weeks ago. One of Russian bloggers posted a video with Bill, and I watched it, and I kind of sort of stored it in the back of my mind, because the thing is that there are many, many hundreds of such videos. Okay, hundreds of videos from the survivors of the Mariupol siege, civilians who are all making similar claims about Ukrainian armed forces and the Azov battalion. And simply on a sheer number of these videos, I would say that to dismiss them as Russian propaganda, I don't think that would be honest, right? You can't just dismiss something because you don't like it. You can't just say something is not true because it conflicts with your world view, with the ideas and notions that you hold in your head. You can't hide from information when it feels uncomfortable, right? You can. Of course, you can't hide from it, but I'm saying that you shouldn't. Anyways, on with this thread which Bill wrote, and they kind of describe his experience of living in Mariupol through the siege of the city. Here we go. I have been asked to tell what happened to my family, my friends, from my apartment, building, and myself in Mariupol. First off, I want everyone to know that the real Ukrainians I know are kind, generous, and brave. They deserve all the help you can give. I am a Canadian, married to a woman from Mariupol. We have a teen daughter and had a good life in Mariupol before the war. In November of last year, I was obtained by the Ukrainian SBU, which is the secret police. I was held for 24 hours, questioned, and threatened. One of my interrogators was a man with a British accent who is in the news today. I wonder which man that is. The last time I saw him, he placed a gun on the table and said if I caused any trouble, he and his friends would visit me and my family and eliminate any problem. I would like to pause here and say, I'm not sure if he means either of the two British mercenaries that just yesterday were condemned to to a death sentence by a tribunal of the Donetsk People's Republic. He's not being very specific. He simply says that it's one of a man with a British accent. I don't know. Go on with a tweet. On the first day of the war, the apartment building next to ours was attacked by mortars and set on fire. There was no question who did it, as there were no Russian or DPR forces within 50 kilometers of Mariupol. The next day, my apartment was attacked and completely destroyed. We and 4 other families lost everything that day. One of the elderly residents burned alive. We were forced to move to the basement for shelter and protection. Systematically, over the next 10 days, the Nazis drove everyone into the basement. They used us as human shields. I'm going to pause here. This is something that the Russian news outlets and the Russian Ministry of Defense have been reporting on since the beginning of the special military operation or war or Russian aggression, Russian invasion into Ukraine, whatever you want to call it as. The fact that Ukrainian armed forces used people as human shields has been reported on by the Russian news and the Russian Department of Defense, or Ministry of Defense rather, for many, many, many weeks. And even if it's mentioned in the Western media, it is always dismissed as propaganda. But as I said, now that Mariupol is under the control of Russian forces, and a lot of these people who have been used as human shields have a chance to tell their story, they are telling their story. There are hundreds of hours of video at this point of residents of Mariupol coming out and saying that it was the Ukrainians who destroyed their buildings. It was the Ukrainians who terrorized them, who forced them to hide in their basement, and more importantly, it is the Ukrainians who prevented them from leaving the city in the first place. I'm going to go on with reading the tweet. Bill says, we lost gas, power, and water on the first day, so we had to build a fire to heat water and cook. Each morning, we would collect the wood. Some days we would not be attacked, but never 2 days in a row. When we were attacked, it was by mortars as soon as we were seen outside. They kept us in the basement so they didn't have to pay too much attention to the shields. Also, it kept us from seeing fortifications the Azov Nazis were building in between apartment buildings. I'm going to pause here and comment. Numerous photos and video evidence exist of Ukrainian armed forces and the Azov battalion in Mariupol specifically, and Ukrainian armed forces throughout the contested areas where the residential areas in villages and cities, using infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, buildings like schools and hospitals, playgrounds, apartment buildings, to either store ammunition and equipment, or they fortify them and use them as firing positions. All of these things are against the Geneva Convention. I'm going to go on with reading Bill's tweet. On the 10th morning, a woman named Oksana and 3 others, myself included, went outside to start the fire. As we collected wood, there was a mortar attack, and Oksana was hit in the left calf. This wound tore her calf apart. I was the only one that had first aid. For the next 10, I took care of her wounds. She's the bravest person I will ever know. Only time I heard her scream or cry was when she was hit. When I came to dress her wounds, she never complained, never cried, and always thanked me for my help. For 5 weeks, All of us did not know if death would visit us. Would we get killed by a mortar, a shell, or a Nazi that just wanted to kill a subhuman Russian? That's what they believe. I could tell you more. I have so much in my mind, it's hard to keep straight. And here the tweet ends. And I'm going to end this video as well. But again, and I'm not going to get tired of repeating this, right? For the sake of the people in Ukraine and for our own sake, right? Listen to the survivors and don't just dismiss what they have to say as Russian propaganda. Okay? Look, the thing about propaganda is that it's everywhere. There is propaganda in America, there is propaganda in Europe, there is propaganda in Russia. Okay? There's definitely a lot of propaganda in Ukraine. Okay? Propaganda really to me just means things that you hear which are bent in some way, either by outright lies or by subtle manipulation of words, using some words that are not so clear, the definition isn't clear. You know, as we've seen in the example with Denisova, she said, what is it she said? Unethical language to really say lying, right? So this kind of careful massaging of facts through language, or just outright lying, which Denisova is guilty of. You know, propaganda is pervasive. So you can't say that, oh, this is Russian propaganda or, oh, this is American propaganda. You know, propaganda is everywhere. So stop calling it propaganda. It's information. It's just information that you get. And you can take this information and look at it logically, right? Like in the example with Bill's story, you can look at the details of his story and see if they make sense to you, right? When the Russian Ministry of Defense says that the Ukrainian armed forces are using civilians as human shields, okay, you can think whether or not that makes sense, right? And at first you would say, well, how can it possibly make sense? You know, how could they use their own people? Well, the thing is that to Ukrainian armed forces, people who live in Donbass are not their own people. They are terrorists, separatists. They are the people who didn't want to be part of Ukraine, you see. So if you look at it through that context, then yes, of course it makes sense that Azov Battalion and the Ukrainian armed forces, and honestly, I shouldn't even separate the two. Okay, so Ukrainian armed forces use people as human shields because these people were subhumans. I'm going to end my video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.